When I decided to spend a year abroad traveling as a photographer, I struggled to decide right away what camera gear to bring and what computing tool to use as well. After refining my list and wanting to apply a minimalist mindset to the whole experience from the beginning, I settled on this, the iPad Pro. This is how I came to the conclusion that the iPad Pro is one of the best tools for traveling creatives. Hi, my name is Jorge. I've been working in the film industry since 2013, and I recently started doing photography for fun, but also professionally as well. Before the global crisis, I spent 14 months in Japan traveling and working as a professional photographer, and that's why I think this is one of the best tools for traveling creatives. Whether you've been living on the bleeding edge of technology or you're already falling behind and now are trying to catch up, there's something here for everybody. Your time is very important, so on the description of the video you'll find timestamps for all the categories of it, so you can jump ahead if you want to. With all that out of the way, shall we give it a go? While traveling abroad in economy, for example, or coach, or riding the Shinkansen bullet train from Tokyo to Osaka, space is very important and weight is very important as well. You want to be nimble, lightweight, be able to walk quite a bit, take the shot if you need to, and on the downtime, be able to edit as well. For example, in the middle of a downpour in Osaka, hold an umbrella and have your camera and have your iPad and still be able to take the shot, you need to be lightweight. It is cheaper than buying, for example, a MacBook Pro or a Dell XPS, and smaller as well. Especially if you buy it refurbished, you can save quite a bit, about $200 depending on where you buy it in the country. That could be enough for an Apple Pen, could be enough for Apple Care, or any other accessories that you need. So, not bad. Screen quality. This is actually very important, especially when you're editing photos for printing books and your own large prints. You want to be as accurate as possible. The P3 display on the iPad Pro is actually as accurate as it can get on a tablet compared to pretty much everything else. And right here we have an article from AnandTech. And in this article we can go into detail about the specifications and the actual levels of the display. This is really important because you could say, I'm gonna save some money and buy a cheap Windows laptop, but then you're spending more money on a professional color grading monitor, or you're printing and it doesn't look like you want to, and you print again and you print again, and then you do that 3-4 times to get the proper best result, and you're spending money and time doing that. On a MacBook Pro or a laptop or a Windows PC, you can use a calibration tool to make sure you're as close as possible to the real colors. You cannot do that on a tablet, at least not the way we would want to, right? There's other ways like using proprietary apps to see the color shift between your photos on your camera roll, but it's not really changing the gamma of the actual display. It's not changing the settings or the profile of the display, which is really important to know. So this is as close as you can get to color accurate photos and prints and photo books and things like that on a tablet compared to pretty much everything else. There's a lot of accessories out there for the iPad Pro. You'll see most people speaking about the pen and also the keyboard case as well. But I believe there's a lot more important accessories that you need to get for your iPad. USB-C hub, really important so you can have access to the ports and you can offload your media, and a portable drive. Could be a thumb drive, a hard drive, a regular hard drive, or a Thunderbolt mini drive as well. The Apple Pen. It's flexible, it's light, it's fun to use, but it's not mandatory in my opinion. You can edit just as fine with your finger. You can use that money towards, for example, a Lightroom subscription, which gives you a cloud storage. So now you're not worried about losing your data if something happens to your iPad. Or if you also have a MacBook Pro, you can work in between those two seamlessly with the cloud, which is really nice if you want to do special photo book arrangement and print your own book, which we'll do that in the next couple of videos as well. So keep an eye out for that. Those are my main suggestions or my main recommendations to why I use an iPad Pro especially a Pro over anything else. How do I use my iPad Pro? Very simple. I have Adobe Lightroom. So once I use the hub to import all the footage or the photos into the actual iPad or a portable drive, then I import them into Lightroom. I save them on the cloud and I can work between a MacBook and an iPad, no problem. All stored on the cloud, which is really nice and handy. So, like I mentioned before, if you're saving about $100, $200 on a refurbished iPad, maybe you want to put that into Lightroom. Maybe you want to put that into AppleCare. It just makes your life easier. Now let's take a look at the iPad and see how can I import footage, import photos, save them on the cloud, save them on Lightroom, and we'll go from there. At the moment, I'm not going to use the Apple Pencil. I'll use a mouse so you can follow my movements. Before we actually start importing and doing the editing, we have to do a couple settings here. So we'll go into the settings menu. We'll go into accessibility and we'll go to, where is it? Display and text size. At the very bottom, we're going to turn off auto brightness. We don't need that. I'll explain why in a second. Then we go to display and brightness and we turn off true tone. We also turn off night shift. We don't need that as well. When you use a calibration tool like the color checker or the X-Rite on a MacBook or a Windows PC, it will ask you to settle the brightness between 200 nits and 250 nits. Since we know that the iPad can go up to, sometimes up to 500 nits, the best thing we can do is turn off auto brightness and then make sure our brightness is about 50% or a little lower than 50%. That will give us about 250 nits. And that's the number one issue with printing. Not only the colors are wrong if you're not using a calibrated screen, but also the exposure is way off. Your photos are always way darker because on the screen, if it's not calibrated properly, it's always exposed correctly. We can start moving into the Finder. I have the USB hub here, so once I connect the memory card, it pops right there as entitled. So it's very simple. We can navigate, we can go into the folders. I use a Fujifilm X100F, so I can scroll, find my photos. I happen to like this one very much. This photo was inspired by Bicycle Thieves, directed by Vittorio De Sica in 1948, one of my favorite movies of all time. So I know I want this one, so what I can do is select and either copy, move, duplicate. You can do whatever you want. I'm just gonna copy, and I can go on my iPad and just paste. I'm just gonna do one so you can see what it is. We don't have to spend too much time doing that. And since we bought the refurbished iPad, only 64 gigs are available, so I don't wanna save too many photos in here. I'd rather move them into a hard drive or a portable drive and back it up that way. Okay, so once we've decided how we're gonna distribute our photos and copy them and back them up, then we can actually open Lightroom. So when we do that, we have a quick overview of our photos. I have here catalogs and albums already prepared. But before we do anything, I want to go into the settings and do a couple things, quality of life improvements, I would say. So first, make sure that you can only download smart previews. That way it keeps the full resolution file on the cloud and not on your iPad. The other thing we can do in the import is disable the camera rolls. If you take simple photos like your cats and dogs from home and you have them on your camera roll, it will auto import all of that, and we don't want that. We don't want to clutter Lightroom. That's very important, so I disable that. We can make sure that our cloud is on. So right here, I am synced and backed up. What this means is that whatever I do here on my iPad is going to automatically show on my MacBook as well. So I can pick one device, start editing, put it down, grab the other. It will take a minute to sync and everything will be done the way I was doing it. So that's very important. So for example, if we scroll to our favorite photo from Vittorio De Sica, we can go here into the light profile. So of course, exposure, contrast, highlights, all the usual things, color as well, effects, details, everything you're already familiar with. And that's really important because, again, you have the exact same tools than the computer or the desktop version. Another thing I like about Lightroom is, in my case, like I mentioned, I'm using a Fujifilm X100F. So when I have RAW files, they're imported, no problem here. But I can go into the optics and enable lens correction. So the software knows what camera I'm using, has the metadata here. So it's telling me exactly what camera I use, the millimeter, the ISO, all the settings. So it knows that, and it applies the correction automatically. You may want to do that, or you may want to avoid that. It's up to you, but at least you have a way of correcting the lens and also removing chromatic aberration, which is really, really nice. You can do this section here with the JPEG photos, but not this one with the JPEG photos. So if I go back and I choose a JPEG, in optics, even though I have the option, it doesn't really do anything at all because there's no raw data to know the metadata of the camera, what lens was used, the optics, anything. So I kind of like that. I normally shoot JPEG, but when I'm doing professional work, I do also shoot RAW as well. And in the optics, I have an option of correcting the warping and the lens distortion of the camera, which is really nice. Once you've done editing some of the photos, you're ready to export. So you can just, export here, share. You can choose the quality, you can choose the resolution, send it to Dropbox or send it to a drive. Lots of options right there. All right, almost done here. Today we talked about why do I recommend using an iPad versus a MacBook or a Windows PC, what accessories do I personally recommend, and how do I use the iPad. Hopefully now you have a better picture of why do I use an iPad and why I use it the way I do, why it's a great tool for people traveling and content creators and photographers on the go. And there's a lot more coming. We'll go into in-depth tutorials, we'll talk about screen calibration in other devices, we'll talk about printing your own photo books and reviewing the books as well. So please stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching and for giving me your time. I hope you have a great day. Good luck.